evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Light 'em Up Lounge for the 9th episode of the virtual Puro Sabor Festival 2021. I can't believe it. What a journey it has been. 9 episodes filled with amazing conversations, inspiring discussions about the state of the industry, about the cigar manufacturing process and the in Nicaragua. And here we are for our 9th episode to talk about why and how Nicaragua ended up at the number as manufacturing country of and very special conversation, discussion, and episode. We have an exciting panel of industry icons, media professionals that will be joining us. And I am delighted and honored to welcome, first of all, Patrick Lagreid from Halfwhell. Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us tonight.
My pleasure. Glad to be here and glad to be a part of this. I'm looking forward to this.
Next up in line, Erik Calvino from Cigar Snob magazine, all the way from sunny Florida. Brother, it's good to see you. Thanks for being
here with us. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for having me.
And last but not least, the one and only Reinhold Widmayer from Cigar Journal from Vienna, or close to Vienna, actually, just around the corner, literally from where I am. Reinhold, good to have you. Thank you for being here with us.
Evening or good morning, whatever you want to say. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Well, it's certainly a good morning for the next gentleman. We have to introduce, actually we don't need to introduce him, but the host for the show rides all the way from Dubai with slightly sleepy eyes. Brother, welcome. Thanks for joining us at this ungodly hour.
Thank you. What an honor. What an honor. Indeed, an amazing panel. Putting those gentlemen together is an amazing thing, is an accomplishment. You know, I've been fighting a jet lag from hell after the PCA. And last night was the first night I get proper sleep. And guess what? 4 o'clock in the morning for this session.
That's brilliant. That's some serious dedication for you. So let's kick things off. Let's start right away. And let's talk about what we all love best, and that is cigars, but in particular, Nicaragua and why it ended up at the #1 spot as a manufacturing country. And with that, Rod, I'll hand over to you and you take it away, brother.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I am going to get down to it immediately, and I want to address the big point. With your permission, gentlemen, I'd like us to start from a macro point of view. And as the discussion evolves, we'll get, into micro details of the discussion. Why is Nicaragua today the #1 manufacturing country in the world? What changed? How did this slow evolution take place? What changed in Nicaragua and what changed in the rest of the world? If you are to summarize your thoughts about this, what would be your input on a question like this? And Patrick, if you don't mind, we start with you, simply because I love that mic you're using and I want to get myself one of those.
Not a problem. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've been covering cigars since about 2010, so a little over a decade now. And those who know me also know I work in pro sports. And one of the things that kept coming to mind was just the sort of natural evolution of a country and a group of manufacturers that have continued to develop and evolve and push forward, get to know the land better, get to know the agriculture better. And, it's sort of like you take a basketball player or a soccer player, football player, and it's one thing when they're 18 and they're full of talent and they're just all full of potential. And then you give them a couple of years and you say, wow, this person has really developed into a well-rounded athlete. And I think that's sort of what kept coming back to me with Nicaragua was that, it's been on the radar for a long time, but the companies that are there, they're more invested in farming and in processing tobacco. They're continue to refine their production techniques. You have an incredibly rich climate and rich agricultural sense of it that gives the country not only distinctiveness, but diversity in terms of what kind of profiles it can generate. The tobacco tends to play well with other countries, not completely universally, but certainly more so than not. And I think you just put all those things together with a little bit of time, and you get to a point where Nicaragua has now developed into a country that sort of has everything going for it. It has established cigar makers. It has up and coming cigar brands being made there. It has great farming. It has personalities that are helping to draw attention to it. So for me, it's sort of that natural evolution of just everything coming together. And when it does, it really results in a big payoff for everyone involved and the country as a whole.
Okay, thank you. That's a great start. Erik?
I think that the biggest thing that has set Nicaragua apart is the attention to quality. And I think that Patrick touched on it, but it's the quality of the cigars that come out of Nicaragua, right? In a lot of places, and Patrick and I have been at factory after factory, and Reinhold as well, factory after factory together. And in a lot of other places, you see factories that don't apply additional processing to the tobacco. And what I mean by processing is additional fermentation. So we'll go to a factory and they buy their tobacco from their supplier. And that tobacco, soon after that, goes onto the rolling tables. In Nicaragua, even the smallest factory, like we've been to some tiny chinchalitos, and no matter how small and how reduced the space is, they've always got a pilon going on with some additional fermentation. And that tells you a little bit about how these companies think about quality. They're not just taking a tobacco that has been half processed by the grower and then sold to them and then rolling it on the table. They're doing their additional process to give it kind of their signature. And then obviously the investment that has gone into Nicaragua, right? Companies like Oliva have upgraded their factory and the technology, and the factories have improved the quality. AJ, the irrigation investments that he's made, Placencia. So all these companies have invested a lot into the quality of the product. And I think that's the number one key. It's not anything that Nicaraguan cigar companies are doing different than other cigar companies in terms of marketing or anything else. It's really the product, the quality of the product. When you smoke the cigar, you want to come back and smoke that again. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? And so I think the number one thing, if I was to summarize, is really the attention and investment put into quality. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Reinhold?
I would like to agree with Erik and Patrick on all they said, and would like to probably add another aspect. Nicaragua is not a new cigar country. I mean, they have at least 60-year-old tradition of farming and also manufacturing cigars. I would like to to point out who put Nicaragua on the map as a cigar country. And when you look at it, it's companies that somehow gained worldwide attention and put Nicaragua on the map, like Huer de Nicaragua, Padron, Placencia, Perdomo, and then later on Drew Estate, A.J. Fernandez, my father, Rocky Patel, probably in the future Fuente. It's those prestigious worldwide brands that attracted people to the Nicaraguan cigar products. And I think we also have to give them credit enough for making Nicaraguan cigars known and desirable worldwide.
this is all amazing, and I thank you for all this input. I cannot help but to think of external factors that impacted this or resulted in this. Do you believe the drive was internal or a reflection to what's happening in other countries as far as the manufacturing and the industry as a whole, the growth in Nicaragua? And please feel free to answer whoever feels like taking a first shot at this.
If I may, I want to say, you have all these prominent names and great cigar companies in Nicaragua with a ton of knowledge about cigars. The willingness to invest money on a big scale, and all these guys have great relationships with their workers. You look at any of those companies I pointed out before, their employees are like family. It's a great relationship between the manufacturers and the working force. I don't think that any external affairs make the difference. It's the knowledge of the people, mostly Cuban. It's the ability to invest in that country. It's the country that lets them do whatever they are doing. And that makes that beautiful flower of diversity, as Patrick said before, and quality, as both of them pointed out. Everybody is able to get their dreams into reality. That's what it is, I think. It's a dream come true for them.
Very well said. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I sort of think it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. I certainly think that you can have a lot of internal push to meet the level that your competitors are at, whether that's the Dominican or wherever, because that's certainly the last couple of years, it's always been the Dominican and Nicaragua sort of going head to head for who's bringing or who's importing the most cigars into the US. And I can't speak as well to other parts of the world, but I think there's also a lot of external factors that seemingly maybe 5 or 8 years ago, it seemed like people were just into Nicaragua because they weren't as knowledgeable about it. It wasn't as well known, maybe, despite the long history. And I think you certainly had, your Drew Estates, and Jonathan Drew that was really bringing a lot of attention to it. I mean, again, you look at some of the rise of these companies over the last 10 years, Tatuaje, my father, the list can just keep going on and on and on. And then you have a lot of, like I said, staple companies like Perdomo, who, creates or who manufactures a ton of cigars and has a really broad audience that maybe doesn't always overlap to some of these other, what we might call hotter niche boutique, whatever you want to call them, brands. So I think I think the two can go hand in hand personally.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that it's so much external factors, other than the obvious external factor, which is Cuba, right? Which all of these guys came from Cuba, like Reinhold was saying. The majority of these guys that have led these factories came from Cuba with Cuban ideals of making cigars, but they couldn't make those cigars in Cuba because, again, like Reinhold said, the government didn't allow them to do things the way that they wanted to do them. So yeah, I don't think it's beyond that. I don't think it's external. I think that these companies like, again, the Olivas, the Padrones, the Perdomos, all these Drew Estate, they had these ideas of creating a better product, and they just went for it and invested in it and did all the things that they had to do to make better cigars day in, day out. And so you have people who start off with a small factory, then get a second factory, a third, and then they end up buying a bigger factory. And then what's the next thing they do? This is something I don't see in a lot of other countries. The next thing they do after they've got their factory set up is buy some land and start growing tobacco in order to secure that. And so to get that vertical integration, most of these players that we're talking, all of the companies just about that we've mentioned here loosely, they're all vertically integrated. And you can't say that. You can't say that for most of the other cigar producing countries. So I think that's huge.
Erik, in conjunction to that, I'm curious, when quite often on the show we talk about the idea of terroir and obviously how a particular origin can transcend into the final smoking experience. With that in mind and everything that you guys pointed out and mentioned before, what do you think that quintessential idea of Nicaraguan terroir could be, and how does it play into that overall equation of Nicaragua now sitting on that prime spot?
I think that what the Nicaraguan land gives you is it gives you easy power, right? And so for other countries to get to that level of power, they have to sacrifice something else. And I'm not saying that Nicaraguan cigars have to be powerful, but a component of a good cigar is that the power, the flavor, the aroma, all these things are balanced, right? And so when you have to work so hard to get power, to even bring it just to balance with your flavors and aromas, you have to do a lot more, and it gets a lot harder because as the plant goes up, right, there's less tobacco at the top. So if I have to work so hard to get power, that means I have to go up the primings, right? And so there's less of it, and there's less yield when you do get it. So it's hard to get that power. Whereas in Nicaragua, you can get the requisite power down at this level. And so by having easy power, that's why we have this variety of cigars, right? Because I don't have to worry about the power. The power's there, right? So Nicaragua gives you that. And I think other places don't do that as easily, right? The tobacco either gets really dirty or gets really harsh or gets really peppery, really spicy when you try to get that power. And I think that's the biggest thing that these guys, all these guys that came to Nicaragua early on found and said, holy smokes, we can get the power easily here at the middle of the plant. We don't have to go to the top. And so you have a lot of cigars out of Nicaragua that are excellent cigars with medium to full, and they may have media hojita or half a leaf of ligero, if any. So I think that's the biggest thing that the terroir gives you in Nicaragua, to me.
I would totally agree, Erik. And when you look at Nicaragua and the landscape and the soil, Nicaragua provides so many different types of soil, and of course that results in different types of tobacco. Mainly because it's the land of volcanoes and lakes. It's the diversity that you get. When you compare that to the Dominican Republic, they look for an ounce of diversity between this valley and that valley. And in Nicaragua, you have it all there, the whole palette. And that's why I think that the Nicaraguan soil provides them with a lot of resources, and they know how to work it.
Great.
Yeah, I would just agree with that. And what's interesting, and Erik, you were touching on this a bit. When I think of like the Dominican, just as a comparison, and like you were saying, the stretch to get strength, and the stretch that you sometimes have to get power. It almost seems like Nicaragua, at least recently, has tried to maybe explore going a little bit lighter with growing Cameroon and with growing Connecticut seed and with growing things that maybe are trying to widen out the range that they can produce, which I think is interesting. I find fascinating. I'm a city boy. I don't get out to farms much. So anytime I get to talk agriculture or anything with anybody is fascinating to me. And just seeing where some of these experiments are happening in the fields in Nicaragua to give that country a little bit more range, a little bit more, a few more tools in the tool bag to create still very good, very flavorful cigars, but maybe that aren't as rooted in that easy strength that I think the country's become known for.
Patrick, one thing you made me think about, also with your previous answer, when you spoke about like the new thing, and at some point Nicaragua was sort of the new kid on the block. Since everything always comes and goes in waves, and those trends and up and downs are natural cycles that we all live through, do you believe that the industry at some points in history is just hungry for something new, and you're looking for a different flavor profile that probably favors one country over the other, and it's just natural life cycles?
I certainly think there's some of that. I think, maybe in particular amongst younger cigar smokers, that, breaking out of that mold of maybe what your dad smoked or what your older brother smoked or whatever. I mean, there's always that curiosity. And I think that extends to things like music and art and other activities. And like I said, I keep going back to somebody like a Drew Estate, who really not only puts great cigars out, but was really putting out a cultural piece too. And that certainly was something that a lot of people seem to latch onto more so than maybe, a Padron, who is a very traditional cigar company. Drew Estate was showing the streets and the graffiti and the murals and things like that. I think there's always some portion of the market that's yearning for what's new and just maybe even what's different. I can speak for myself, and not even professionally. Personally, I just enjoy trying new things. So when I go out to have a meal somewhere, if there's something on the menu I've never tried, that's what I'm trying. If there's a bottle of wine from a region that maybe isn't known for growing wine, that's what I'm ordering. Because I just find myself intrigued to try something new. And, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And as the saying goes, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So I love experience.
Speaking of experience, so this is the perfect segue for me for the next question. Excuse me. I'm gonna try to jog your memories and get into the emotional part of your memory, and ask you about your first, if you remember your first Nicaraguan cigar. Why did you smoke that cigar? What got you there? And what can you remember from that cigar? And Reinhard, this one is starting with you. Reinhold, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I keep on confusing that. It's just the last part. I'm sorry. I come from the Middle East, and for us, they sound the same. I apologize.
Not a problem. Not quite sure, but I believe my first Nicaraguan cigar was a Padron.
Okay.
I also think to remember that it was in the late 80s or beginning of the 90s. I was in the US and someone told me, listen, I have here a cigar from a very small factory and they have the potential to grow big because those cigars are great. And as much as I remember also from talking with the Padrons in the late 80s, they were not nationwide yet in the US, if I'm not mistaken. And they were a pretty small company. I think to remember stories when Jorge told me that at his first RTDA show, he was a bit confused about the big other companies that were out there, and he was a bit scared and stuff like that. So back then, Padron was not a global brand as it is now. And so I'm pretty sure it might have been a Padron. And I really liked it, I have to say. It was a classic. It was the classic line back then, of course. I liked it very much, I have to say.
And would you say that was the first thing that made you think, wait, these guys might have something, I need to look into that?
That took a while. For me, Nicaragua was not really on my cigar map for much longer. I think that later in probably in 93, 94, I got to know Mr. Martinez Cuenca and Joel de Nicaragua, and his experience with his brand made me think of Nicaragua as a cigar country. But still, well, living over here in Europe, Nicaraguan cigars were not available at that time. We only got Cuban cigars. I was lucky enough to be traveling to the US very often, and that's where I got all my other cigar experience. But over here, you only got Cuban cigars. So I was in a sort of disadvantage over the other guys in the US.
Okay, thank you. Erik?
So when I was a little kid, my grandfather smoked Padron. So as a little kid, I would ride my bike and buy him his 2 Padrones for the day. So that was my first experience, but that's not the first time that I smoked them.
Because you must have sniffed them and hugged them. And
yeah, you know, the funny thing is that back then, Padron was, so I was a kid, so it's probably like mid to late 80s, and probably mid 80s. And Padrones were sold in what here in Miami we have in all these little Cuban, they're called cafeterias, right? They're just like a place you go to eat, but they always have a little window where you get your Cuban coffee. And then the Padrones would be, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because Reinhold's first Nicaraguan cigar was a Padron. So I would go and buy him his 2. I was a minor, obviously, but this didn't matter in those days. Plus, they knew my grandfather there at the cafeteria, so it was always get him his 2 cigars and then take them back. And yeah, of course, they weren't in cello or anything like that. They were out of a little bundle. It was un mazo. And then the guy at the or the lady at the cafeteria would just grab the 2, give them to me, and then my grandfather would pay when he would go at the end of the week or whatever. And so I would take those to him, and I would always smell them, right? But I didn't know anything. I was a kid. Fast forward, my last year of college, the Oliva family, who I was very good friends with, and I still am, obviously, to this day. So I was friends with Jose. And so Jose tells me, hey, my dad has finally launched his own line of cigars. Gilberto Oliva Sr. had been working for other companies, mostly Plasencia. And so finally he was to have his own brand. And so Jose says, hey, we gotta smoke, you know, from the first box that has come out of my dad's production so that you can try a cigar. I had never smoked one, right? So well, you're gonna have to give me some instruction of what to do here. I had no idea what to do. This is like 1994, 95. And so he gives me a basic rundown crash course of how to smoke the cigar. And I was always a guy, so I played sports a lot growing up. So I never smoked anything, like no cigarettes, no weed, no nothing. I didn't smoke. I thought that I could someday be an athlete of some sort, obviously a childish idea. But so finally, you know, I get to smoke the cigar, and I would always drive as fast as I could from point A to point B, right? That night, I smoked the cigar for the first time. I'll never forget, it was a Lonsdale. And it was the Gilberto Oliva, it was called Don Gilberto, and it was a white label with gold lettering. Maria Jose probably remembers this. She's too young, but she has seen the packaging from back in those days. And that day, I'll never forget, I drove home in second gear the whole way, like,
That's
this is
good.
nice. Like, I can really get into this.
This
So-
is too good.
Yeah, so my first experience with a Nicaraguan cigar was not that I was comparing it to anything else. It was literally the first cigar that I smoked.
De-virginizing your system.
Yeah, and so again, I drove home relaxed that day, that night. I got home and the first thing I did was call Jose the next day, like, hey, can I get more of that? And he's like, you liked it, huh? Yeah, I was like, yeah. And from that day forward, I had been smoking cigars, but predominantly Nicaraguan and predominantly Oliva in the first, for the first, I don't know, 5 years of smoking. I didn't smoke anything other than Oliva because it was my buddy's company. And, I'm going to support my friend. So it was just nonstop Oliva. And then I moved to New York and I had Maria Jose. Do you remember those, the Grand Maduro? It was maybe you guys have seen it. It was a box pressed with a red and like cream label. This is before Oliva rebranded everything. And it was like there were these, I used to love the Robusto, and it was this little box pressed Robusto that you could get through very quickly. But it was very dark, but not terribly strong. And so it was super flavorful. And I fell in love with that cigar. And it was that's what I smoked. And in my apartment in New York, I had stacks of boxes, and I would give the boxes away to people because people would come to my apartment and be like, hey, those are nice boxes. Like, yeah, here, have them. I have tons of them. And so, yeah, that was my first experience with a Nicaraguan cigar, which was a cigar, right? But I loved them, and I've obviously been a fan ever since. So to me, when I saw Nicaragua starting to sort of grow in its cachet globally, I was like, that's what I've been saying. I've been saying they're great all this time, right? So yeah, for me, it's very satisfying to see Nicaragua, in the place where it belongs right now, right? In that top spot. So it's very satisfying for me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, I have to somewhat say I don't necessarily remember my first Nicaraguan cigar. And I will preface that by saying that I didn't really get into understanding the differences between a Nicaraguan made, a Dominican made, a Cuban made, a Honduran made, whatever it may be, until a few years, until I started getting into actually writing about them. But I do remember very distinctly, there was a store that's unfortunately no longer in business out here, just outside of Phoenix. And I remember they had a lot of Joya de Nicaraguas. And I remember those being that was the strong cigar. That was the man cigar. And the one in particular I remember was they had a Vitola called the Grand Consul, which is, I believe, a 4.5 by 60 figurado with a tapered head.
Correct.
And I just remember going, wow, that looks like a really cool looking cigar. And lit one up, and and then unfortunately I didn't cruise home in second gear. I went and passed out somewhere, I'm sure. But that was one of the early ones. I have to think, again, if somebody had the record of it, I would also probably think that there was probably an Oliva Serie V in there somewhere, because those tend to do very well in Phoenix. And I, again, distinctly remember it was a big deal when the annual Maduro release would come out of the Serie V. And again, same shop. They had some great selections, and it was like, you got to be here at whatever day it was, and at 2 p.m, because we've got 20 boxes and they are going to go. And that was almost sort of a tradition, was like, you hear people go beer hunting or wine hunting or whatever. For me, and this is 2009, 2010, was going out Oliva Serie V Maduro hunting, because that was a big thing. And I actually still have some boxes of those laying around somewhere. So those are the two that stand out. And like I say, it took a little while for me to get back. And now in those years, I kind of reverse engineered learning what's different about Nicaragua, the Dominican, and all the other countries that make cigars.
You know
So
what?
when
It
you
takes a
won't
lot
think
to.
back to those.
Sorry, go ahead. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, right, please.
No.
I was really curious when all these gentlemen speak about their early memories of those cigars, and then you watch the evolution over the years, the improvements in manufacturing, and then the quality over all these years. That's obviously a most critical component in bringing a country to that top level and the number one spot as a manufacturing country. Now, what would you say were some of those key improvements? And also on the flip side, what are the things that could then easily go wrong, or what should the Nicaraguan manufacturers be truly careful and cautious about when looking ahead?
Well, I would love to start with that one because I just had a conversation with somebody about this, and it was Pete Johnson, Tatuaje, and he had won our #1 cigar of the year last year with the Karloff, which was an extension to his Monster series. And I got to say, the Tatuaje Frankenstein, which was the first one, was also another early Nicaraguan cigar that I smoked that I don't remember as thinking of it as a Nicaraguan cigar. It was just it was a funky cigar that came in a coffin and had like blood splatter on it. But I distinctly remember asking him when we had him on the live show from the PCA trade show. I said, like, I remember the Boris, which was the cigar that was sort of based off of, as being a really good cigar. But I thought that whatever happened between the Boris and the Karloff was just that much better. And I distinctly remember asking him, do you think that if you had made the Karloff in 2017 with whatever resources you had at that time, that it would have been as good as it is now? And I don't want to misquote him, but it seemed to be that he agreed with that the Garcia family has just committed that much more to growing and procuring tobacco and bringing things into their control as much as possible. And I was really impressed by his candor and his honesty in that one. So to answer your question, I would say number one, you have to take care of the tobacco first and foremost. From the minute, from seed to the time it leaves the factory and it gets to the consumer. Look, Pete has a saying that we use all the time. You can't roll garbage out of a cigar. It just doesn't happen. You can't put a certain band on it and have it make up for improper fermentation. You have to treat the tobacco with priority first and foremost. So I think that's the biggest thing. And that's one of the things that I've seen at least is just continuing to reinvest and learn more and do more when it comes to growing and processing tobacco. So the flip side of that to me is if there were ever to come a point at which something goes wrong or, look, we are dealing with changing climate realities, and that's a challenge for the industry. Falling behind that would be something that would concern me about the quality of Nicaragua as a whole going forward. But for me, it always comes back to you have to take care of the tobacco. From the minute it goes in the ground to the minute it leaves the factory, that is where the conversation starts and ends.
Yeah, I think piggybacking on what Patrick said, I think that he's 100% right. Obviously, that quality is the key. But I think that, and we've touched on that already, in terms of a concern, I would say that wanting to maintain that #1 spot, not that the country thinks of it that way, right? The manufacturers themselves do it. And, we're coming into, tobacco shortages and things of that nature. And I think that the risk mostly sits on when you're trying to rush cigars out because you need to meet these numbers. Every company wants to grow every year, right? You don't want lower production numbers or lower sales numbers. And so I think that's probably the biggest risk for Nicaragua and Nicaraguan cigar makers is really trying to get cigars out when they're really not ready, fast tracking fermentation. I think that's the biggest risk, the way I see it. And then obviously the other risk would be, governmental risks, right? As we know, there's issues there as well. So mitigating those problems in the government are key, right? If the government starts to strip away freedoms and do things of that nature, then we'll see a problem in Nicaragua. But if we don't, and we just let these companies do what they do, I think that the majority of the ones that we've mentioned, the Olivas, the My Fathers, AJ Fernandez, Perdomo, Padron, certainly. Those guys, for the most part, those big companies, they've shown us that they do respect the product, and they will not rush it out. It's that next layer down, which could probably soil the name for Nicaragua. But I think those are my two biggest sort of concerns would be, rushing tobacco when it's really not ready, and governmental concerns, which governmental I think is the more concerning one to me, at least. Being Cuban and knowing what the government can do to ruin a product, that would be my biggest concern. I know that's not fun to talk about.
With both of you, and from the risk factor, I think politics is bigger than anything. I'm not so much concerned that, as you said, those big names, the names that we all like, and the traditional cigar manufacturers, they know the better. They know what they have to do. You will never find any urgency at Padron, at Perdomo, at Oliva. It takes the time that it takes, and they respect the nature too much to rush anything through. There might be some other players, like it happens in the Dominican Republic or probably in Honduras, I don't know, where new players come in and say, okay, here I can make a quick buck with a new sort of boom going on, and let's push out this and that. I'm a marketer, boom, and let's do some, let's earn some money. These guys come and go, and we've seen that in the boom, and we'll see that now because it's happening already. I'm sure it's happening in Nicaragua as well as in the Dominican or any other place except Cuba. I'm not really concerned about the big names, or I should say the traditional names. I'm a bit concerned about the conglomerates, the international, let's name it, General Cigar, all these big companies on the stock market. There might be some challenge. I don't know, because they're not family driven. They are number driven. I don't know. I don't want to, accuse them of anything, but the challenge is certainly there because they need the numbers. I think, the risks is politics, and the advantage that they have is, I think that Nicaragua, for me at least, it has shown that it's the most innovative cigar country over the past 10 years. I've not seen anything happen in any other cigar country that Nicaragua has implemented in terms of irrigation, in terms of chemistry, agriculture, with environmental friendly agriculture, and constantly all these big traditional names are trying out new things, new fields. I think Nicaragua is the most innovative cigar country right now.
Now, as a matter of fact, Nicaraguan cigars have been popping up in the top lists of all your publications more frequently, and as a matter of fact, every single year. And Patrick, you just mentioned one of the cigars and the brands that took the top spot last year. Is that a natural consequence of all the aforementioned aspects? Or could it probably be like the other way around, that those top ratings and reviews and positive feedback on what the industry is doing is a driving factor by itself for the success of the companies and the cigars?
That's an interesting question. I would probably tend to lean towards the former a little bit. You know, I think it's really tough to chase a rating or chase an award. Certainly, you know, when you've got a cigar that's really good, you've got a cigar that you know that you're just, you know, you're beyond proud of. You really feel is a special thing, something you've been working for a while. That said, I also was saying this to one of my colleagues not that long ago that, you know, there's a lot of times where you can put out a really good cigar and cigars can have bad days. You know, they don't get shipped right. They come out of a humidor that was a little wet or a little dry, or that roller may have had a bad day and something was a little tight or something. You know, just, I mean, there can be all sorts of things that go into that. So I tend to think it's the former, probably more in the latter. I don't know if I've really spent a lot of time thinking about that as a possibility. But I would say that the awards and the accolades that Nicaraguan cigars are getting are definitely a result of all the components that I spoke about earlier continuing to bear fruit. You know, better tobacco, the quality control that Erik was talking about, more exposure, more, you know, just kind of more everything for the country seems to really be paying off.
All what you said, Patrick, plus innovation. They're experimenting a lot.
Sure.
And, you know, they've just started a few years ago with shade-grown tobacco, with Cameroon, with different seeds. The diversity is so huge there, and people don't hesitate to experiment. So naturally, new products are coming out that seem to be interesting for a lot of people, at least for a certain time, because it's, you know, new. And I think that adds to whatever you said. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think that while some companies chase ratings, I think that the ones we're talking about, they're chasing that next great cigar that they can make. And I think that that's it. I don't think that that chasing ratings is the thing. At the end of the day, we've already talked about it a million times, right? These guys, they want to make the best cigar that they can possibly make. And to support Reinhold's point, you know, I remember when my father came out with the H2K CT, right? They took Habano 2000, and they grew it in Connecticut and used it as a wrapper. And that's I know that that's in Connecticut, but the guts of the cigar were Nicaraguan. And that's a perfect example of not being afraid to experiment. Naturally, the shade growing operations and those things, obviously, as well. But yeah, they're never afraid to experiment and to push the envelope and to invest. And yeah, it's like Patrick said, just bearing fruit. It's year after year of doing that and getting better at it and constantly striving to make the best possible cigar. I think that's how you end up where we are today.
Yeah. And I just want to add on one more point too. I know that we talked about, or the theme is sort of why is Nicaragua emerging as this number one, but you also have to remember too, that Nicaragua has moved its median so far up the scale in the last 10 years that it's one thing to have like a number one cigar, and that's great. And congratulations to everyone who's done that. But there's a lot of companies who are making really, really good cigars that sell in the 6 and 7 figures annually. That, you know, may not necessarily win an award, but they certainly are getting into the hands of consumers. And so that's something that has also changed drastically as well. That I can't stress enough not to overlook is, again, it's not just who's winning 1s and 2s. It's like who's placing in the top 10 and who's really selling cigars. And that's something that has really also impressed me about what Nicaragua's done the last, last decade or so, that at least I've been paying a lot closer to it, attention to it.
May I add something to that? When I think of Nicaragua, I think of a lot of value-priced cigars as well. that might be a factor. Nicaragua offers, I've looked at our tastings, 3 times more value priced cigars with 89 plus ratings than the other countries. So I don't know how they do it, but they've priced their cigars very well, especially for the international markets. And now think about it. When you have a choice of 3 dozen Robustos, and you have the choice of Cubans in Europe, at least, that are 13 plus euros, 16 and above dollars. And you get a very, very nice Nicaraguan Robusto for 5 or 6 euros. That's half the price.
Yep.
I'm sure that plays a role.
Of course it does.
Absolutely. I would completely agree.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Very valid point. But I cannot help but to think about something. I mean, there's a rosy aspect of the picture, that's for sure. But with the discussion that we just had about what you would like to be improved and what your concerns are, and with the current boom that's happening right now, okay, I cannot help but to think with what might go wrong. There's huge demand. Everybody's behind schedule on their deliveries, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it is. And I'm very worried that yet again, and the history, we're going to be enticed, or I don't want to say encouraged, but I mean, human being. There's a lot of demand. You want to sell cigars. If a certain percentage goes wrong, no one, it's going to go under the radar, etc. Where should Nicaragua be very careful about during this period, especially while considering the level of demand we're experiencing right now? Whether sustainable or not, the orders are there at least for the next 6 months. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. Nick,
I don't know that we can beyond what we talked about earlier. I don't know that we can say anything along those lines, because I think that these cigar makers are obviously masters of their craft, know their product better than any of us. I think that for me to answer anything when I don't work in a factory every day and see what happens and see the tobacco supply down the line, or I think it would be out of place for me to try and answer that with any sort of value. These guys are amazing at what they do, and I don't think that we can really predict anything down the line there, other than what we've already talked about, right? Which are the concerns that I think are valid. Beyond that, from a manufacturing standpoint or tobacco production standpoint, I sit down with these guys all the time. I mean, we're in South Florida, so I had a cigar maker in here today earlier in my office. So we're very fortunate in that way that we talk to these guys all the time. So I think that perspective of a journalist or a publisher telling these guys what they have to be careful about is foolhardy to me. Again, because I talk to these guys all the time, and they see these things and they tell me about the upcoming problems, and we've talked about them. Beyond that, I don't think that I'm qualified to say anything on that, me personally.
Okay.
Yeah, I would only just double back to what you said earlier, Erik, about, and I don't have any concern that the vast majority of manufacturers would ever try and cut a corner or get something to market sooner to fill a demand. I think that, look, number one, I think the industry learned a lot from the cigar boom in the mid 90s. At least I hope they did. We saw what happens when poor quality starts to overtake the market. And, look, I mean, do you want to sell a box today for a case tomorrow? I mean, that's pretty foolish. And I would like to think that, again, the vast majority of the industry has learned that lesson, and they will continue to, to monitor and adjust their production based on the realities that are out there, and understand that, look, the better answer is always give me the better cigar tomorrow than the inferior one today.
Agreed.
I totally agree. I have no concern whatsoever when it comes to manufacturing, to farming or manufacturing cigars. I think that all these great guys know their art, and they know exactly what it means and what they need to deliver for us to enjoy the cigars. It's probably, there's some other aspects probably that might come into play to improve whatever they're doing. Maybe they want to think of a joint effort to improve logistics, or or I don't know, producing boxes or stuff like that. But when it comes to the farming and the cigar making, I have no concerns whatsoever. These, unless there are, as I mentioned earlier, new guys on the market that just want to skip the corner here and there, but not with the brains we're talking about here.
I know MJ's not letting a bad cigar out of that factory.
Yeah.
No.
I have good authority on that one.
It
So
looks very good from where I'm sitting. No, honestly, and I thank you for all of your answers. Obviously, the intention of my question was not in any way, shape, or form to dictate our esteemed producers on what to do and what not to do. On the contrary, I feel very Nicaraguan every cigar that I take, and when something is so beautiful, when something is so amazing, you just want longevity for that product. And so I couldn't agree more with what you've said. With that in mind, I'd like to shift the discussion a bit to the chamber. The evolution of the chamber, and I want to talk in simultaneously, I want to talk about Puro Sabor and what has your experience been over the years. Obviously, you've all been quite involved with different aspects of the chamber. You've obviously been quite involved with different aspects of the festival in Nicaragua. Can you talk to us a bit about your experience with regards to that? Reinhold?
Well, yeah, gladly. I still remember the first festival, I believe, was in 2009, and we were, I don't know, 2 or 3 dozen people. It was very small, very intimate, and for me, it was a highlight in so far as I'm not really a party guy. I love the other festivals as well. But when I visit a festival, I'm not going for the parties. I'm going to learn something, or, to get, different aspects of the farming or manufacturing and stuff like that. And I think that's what Nicaragua was able to provide me with the most. It was 2009 was a small, very amateur, but great festival in the sense that you could spend 3-4 days shoulder by shoulder with all the manufacturers, and they had time to talk with you, and you could ask them any question. They were open, and you could really ask whatever you wanted, and you got your answer. And I think, given the fact that Nicaragua is not a touristic country in the sense when you compare it to the Dominican Republic or to Cuba, where you go for the parties and you add your other week on the beach and stuff like that. I think that Puro Sabor could be a great festival with its unique selling point by doing just what they were only able to do back then, get you into the educational part or edutainment part. There were always, nice parties and gatherings, but the focus was on education. And I think that might be a nice, unique selling point for future Puro Sabors, in concentrating on that part rather than the party part or vacation part.
Yeah, I agree. Those early festivals, they were rough. They were rough around the edges. Nicaragua is not a country, like Reinhold said, that is used to hospitality. They're not. In the Dominican Republic, there's a massive industry around hospitality. Nicaragua, you could tell there's just not even that many hotels in Esteli. And so yeah, they were rough around the edges. But the one thing that was right is still right today, right? The cigar itself, the cigar that you're enjoying at the festival back then, even though the festival wasn't anywhere near where it needed to be, the cigars were excellent. And like Reinhold said, the experience that you got from the manufacturer was fantastic. You really did. You got to spend all this time with these people. And so as the festival has evolved, I think that the cigars are still right? That's what was right in the first few festivals, and that's still right today. And I think that what I see as maybe could be better is that they've taken the focus away from that education part, and they've tried to put too much into each day. So in the morning, you jump on the bus and you go visit a factory, and then in the afternoon you go to a farm, and then after lunch you go to another farm. And so I think that takes away a lot of time that you would have to ask your questions and to learn. So you find that now in the most recent festivals, I think you rush through too much because you're trying to get everyone exposure. Everyone in the chamber wants exposure, and I get that. But I think that it's okay if you have people sign up like you do, for example, in the festival in Dominican Republic. You sign up, and if you missed the sign up for the Oliva tour, sorry, bud, you got to go to another one, right? Or choose the Oliva tour on the next day, or the My Father tour, or the Padron tour. And I think that they've tried to do too much, right? And so you do get to see a lot, but you're also kind of rushing through. So in my view, I think that somewhere between where we are today and where we were in the beginning, where you had that much time to learn and ask questions. And, none of us need to learn and ask questions. We've already been there multiple times and asked all of our questions. But I think that the consumer gets a lot when he can spend time with AJ Fernandez and ask him questions, with Pepin and Jaime, and see them roll a cigar for you. And so the festival has grown, and, it's almost like it kind of takes like a pendulum swing. In the very beginning, it was way too much time, and then now there's a lot less time and more party. And I think somewhere kind of in the middle is the sweet spot for the Nicaraguan Cigar Festival. Having said that, every year that they have it, I will go and I will be there and I will have a damn good time, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that the learning component for a consumer, it's this like light bulb moment when they see that's what you guys talk about when you talk about fermentation. That's what that is. And they get to stick their hand in the pilon, and it burns your hand because it's so damn hot. And to see that and spend time doing that, I think that's where the value comes in for the consumer. So I love it. I think that the growth of it has been very healthy. Like I said, maybe it's a swing too much in this direction, but still a fantastic festival.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm probably the most recent attendee of the festivals between Erik and Reinhold. I missed a lot of the formative years, maybe the adolescence of the festival. So I was relying on reports from one of my colleagues. And the years that I've been there, last probably 4 or 5, they all sort of draw on different things that Erik was talking about. Number one, not only Nicaragua, but you talk about like Esteli versus a city like Santiago in the Dominican Republic. One is a farm town. It's a city that grew up around agriculture, as I understand it, and has only recently seen, hotels come up, and enough hotels to be able to support something like the festival. Whereas Santiago is the second biggest city in the Dominican. It has its own airport. You fly in and out of it. There's people coming out in and out for various reasons. So there's that part of it. And I think Erik touched on it, and this is a challenging one, is that because Nicaragua has become so hot in the last couple of years, there is a challenge of, I want to see everything and as much as I can in the time that I'm there, which, you can either see a lot at a shallow level, or you can see more at a deeper level. And I go back and forth with that. There's a lot of times where I am grateful where it's full days and you're just, you're going and you're saying, okay, well, at least I've seen this building or this facility, even if it was 10 minutes or whatever. But then there's also a lot of times when I like to go, and this is usually when I travel outside the festival time, and just say, hey, so-and-so, can I just follow you around and be in your back pocket for the day and just ask questions as they come up and see where things like that, happen? I tend to get more out of that personally, other than, just the kind of the quicker trip. But look, that's a testimony to where Nicaragua has come, is that you can have the most jam-packed festival that you can set up, and there's always going to be something that gets left on the table that didn't get visited, question that didn't get asked, a facility you didn't get a chance to see for whatever reason. And look, that's a huge testimony to the success of the country and the cigar makers there in the chamber.
And Patrick, I would love to use that as a segue to sort of a follow-up on Riot's question. Besides the festival, the evolution of the chamber at a more holistic level is, I believe, very closely connected to the success of Nicaragua as a manufacturing country overall. So where do you see the future of that, and what do you think the role of the chamber on a broader level could be and should be in order to continue that success story and carry it forth for the next years?
Well, this is probably going to be one of the harder ones I'm going to have to answer, because I'm not as connected with it as maybe I should or could be. But the first thing that comes to mind, and I think Erik touched on this earlier, was that the chamber really has an obligation and a role to play in the domestic affairs of the cigar and tobacco producing businesses that they represent. Without going down the full road of where government can go wrong and things like that, there are going to be things that may come up, like water rights or land use or taxation or whatever the case may be, that could have a negative impact on the ability to produce the cigars that we all love. For instance, what happens if, we're dealing with a situation out here in Phoenix in Arizona where, the reserve levels of the Colorado River and Lake Mead, which is up in southern Nevada, are struggling, and water rights are going to become a huge issue for us in the next 2 years. What if Nicaragua was to face something like that? Who's going to stand up for the Perdomo fields and the Oliva fields and the Plasencia fields and things like that to make sure that they have the water they need to grow the tobacco? Well, that's where the chamber comes in. That's one of the first things that comes to my mind, is ensuring that the countries or the companies that are producing and making possible all the raw ingredients and the personnel and things like that that ends up being a cigar are able to do what they do with minimal headache or obstacle or other interference. I'm sure Reinhold and Erik will have more to say on that. That to me is where one of the first and primary things comes up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think you said it perfectly. I think that has to be the role of the chamber. going forward. It's not just setting up the festival and helping promote Nicaraguan cigars all over the world. It's protecting the resource that you have today, and lobbying or however that works. And you can tell that, tobacco is we have words for this in Spanish, but I'm going to try to find it in English. But it's a sort of sacred industry in Nicaragua. You saw it during the riots. Somehow, trucks full of cigars that were heading out to export were still able to get through the barricades. And that says something when you couldn't move any product, but you could suddenly move tobacco, right? We never saw a hiccup here during those big riots where you couldn't move product from Eteli out to Managua. And yet the trucks full of, the cargo trucks full of cigars were able to get through. So that says something about the importance of tobacco to the government of Nicaragua. And I think that that's probably a testament to the chamber, sort of getting that message into the right ears, so that tobacco can be protected as one of the country's main exports. That's definitely that has to be the place where the chamber puts the majority of their attention every year in protecting, that supply chain for companies, and again, the rights of the growers and box makers and all these different people. There's other issues, obviously, with deforestation, with the wood that goes into the boxes, and so the chamber's leadership and all of that will be key over this short term and long, right? So I think that's where the chamber has to kind of step up, and they've shown that they do step up. So I have confidence that the chamber will do what is necessary to maintain that flow of product coming to the biggest markets in the world.
I totally agree with the two of you. I think the chamber has done a great work, especially on a local level. I know that the relationship between the chamber and the city government is excellent. The mayor is totally behind the chamber when it comes to water supply, deforestation, protection, and stuff like that. And they're all working together. All the companies are working together on that, and for themselves as well, of course. I could see a little more. I mean, as the whole Nicaraguan tobacco and cigar industry gets bigger and more important for the country, I can see more influence, or there should be even more influence on the national government to get the cigar industry more protected in terms of whatever, security, taxes, climate change. I mean, climate change is a big thing in Nicaragua. But I'm confident that the chamber is addressing all these issues that are common for all the manufacturers. And as we all know, politics is a difficult thing. I'm confident, though, that they're addressing it, and hopefully they will succeed and get more and more influential compared to the textile industry or whatever.
What I also have to say, and we obviously all witnessed that, what was wonderful is the innovation and the thirst for adopting to new realities, and obviously the challenges that we all faced over the last 1.5 years. But with the Puro Sabor happening in a virtual format that we were honored to host together with all of you, has been such a wonderful sign of positivity and community and camaraderie. And I would like to personally thank and congratulate the Chamber of Tobacco in Nicaragua on that initiative. And we're fortunate and honored to make a small contribution to that endeavor with hosting those sessions together with all of you. We obviously also would love to give something back, and I will be sharing a short video with you of a line of wonderful products that Reinhard has put together, and he'll give a few more information about how this little initiative that he created is going to play out over the next couple of weeks. But without further ado, let me introduce you to a wonderful line of products, and Reinhard will tell you a little more about it.
Thank you. Okay, so everywhere I go, I've been in this business. I'm a newbie. It's been about 4 years for me. And what I discovered is that there isn't a fair representation for Nicaragua as far as cigar accessories are concerned. So I took it upon me as part of the Leaf Master here in Dubai to design and start a whole line of Nicaragua themed accessories. We're starting with the first lighter and ashtray. We're very excited about this, and we want to push that from now on you should be able to get your Nicaragua themed ashtray, lighter, cutter, etc. And we're very excited about this, and so much that we would like the first 3 ashtrays and lighters to be auctioned, with all the money coming out of this to go to whatever cause or charity the chamber believes is fit. And what we will do is we will post the details of how to go about something like this, but it's as simple as going into @the Leaf Master Cigars Dubai on Instagram. DM us your number. We will create a group. There will be an auction for those, for all the monies to obviously go to charity in Nicaragua. Those will also be sold at a later stage online. And it's just the beginning of a line of Nicaraguan accessories that we as the Leaf Master are very much proud to spearhead.
So with that positive cause and a little giving back and hopefully helping with all the money that's going to be collected through that, going to the Chamber of Tobacco in Nicaragua for positive causes for the evolution of the industry as a whole. And yet again, I believe a tremendous testament of the unity and the support that the various shareholders of the industry are giving to each other. I would also like to invite everybody to follow along the journey for the next 2 weeks leading up to our final show of this year's virtual Puro Sabor festival. And as you all probably know and have heard already, there's a raffle and an opportunity for all of our attendants to win a few boxes of wonderful cigars from Nicaragua. It's a sample pack, a sample box, I should say, from the chamber with cigars of all the members of the chamber. And those are wonderful, wonderful boxes that you could win. Same price tickets for the next Puro Sabor festival happening in Nicaragua itself. So we will yet again let everybody know how to participate, but it's really going to be following along the journey and probably posting your favorite moments from the previous sessions and sharing them with all of us and sharing them with the world about this little endeavor that was the virtual Puro Sabor festival. And then during our final show on August 5th, Reinhard will first of all not only disclose the winners of the auction for the charity, but we will also announce the winners for the raffle of all the cigar boxes and the tickets for the Puro Sabor festival. which I believe is a beautiful, beautiful opportunity, and you should definitely be part of that. So in order to wrap things up, I would love to give all of you a final word to take, as we always say, a little glimpse into the crystal ball together with Rad and myself and all the people watching as to the future of not only the festival and the chamber, but the industry as a whole. We're living through challenging times, yet we're also experiencing boom times in the cigar industry. So let's take a little sneak preview of what's in front of us. Where do you see the state of the industry and the state of the nation right now? And what could we all do for the better of the industry and the better for the future of what we all love best, the world of handmade premium cigars? Reinhold, let's start with you.
I see the future of the Nicaraguan cigar industry very bright. I'm sorry. Wait. Can you take somebody? I haven't.
Absolutely. Erik, over to you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I see nothing but bright things. I think that as long as all the other things that we've spoken about are in place, I don't foresee any regression in Nicaraguan cigars at all. I think that the leadership of the chamber and the leadership of each of the companies that make up the chamber, I think it's in good hands. I think they've got tremendous leadership there, and the product, as we've spoken about over and over, the product itself, it speaks for itself. And yeah, yes, we're going through a bit of a boom in sales of cigars all over the world, and there will be obviously a little bit of a reduction once everyone is back to work, as opposed to working remotely. But I don't think that we'll feel anything other than, people's numbers will change a little bit. But when cigar sales, and we saw it during the boom, there were bad things that happened during the boom, but there were very good things, right? The level of cigar sales were here, and they came up to here, and then they settled here. And so I think that we're in that same scenario where we've introduced a bunch of new smokers to this world. And it's a world, the world of premium cigars it's an enchanting world, right? When you get into it and you start to smoke cigars, and you have this period of discovery, and you try these new products, and you start pairing them with whiskeys and other spirits and wines. And I think that, we have a whole new group of people that are experiencing that right now. And I think the future of cigar making and the premium cigar world as a whole is headed in the right direction. The key is governmental factors, holding us down. So in terms of in Nicaragua, we have the risk of those governmental factors. And then in our respective countries, we have those factors. Here in the US, we have the FDA and those things. And although we've gotten a bit of a break from that, they're actively trying to hurt this industry. And so, yeah, I think that as long as the leadership in all of these areas is in the right place, I think the future is bright. I mean, we're living in a sort of golden age of cigars, right? We have such a variety of quality cigars at every level. And although this is focused on Nicaragua, we can kind of broaden that and say that, there's excellent cigars coming out of everywhere, unlike ever before. And I found myself saying that similar statement, years back. We're in a golden age, and yet the golden age has continued. So I think that's a testament to, the manufacturers, again, in this case, Nicaragua, that have sort of maintained and grown that golden age and it's continued on. I don't see it slowing down. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in in the coming years out of Nicaragua and all the other cigar producing countries.
Reinhold, do you want to resume, or do you?
Yes, gladly. My voice is back. I'm sorry.
Good.
Erik, I totally agree. I think the future is bright. unless something happens from the external side, politics and whatever, logistics, global trade and stuff like that, I believe that the cigars are at a very, very high level coming out of Nicaragua as well as the other countries. I mean, we're talking Nicaragua today, but let's not forget that the Dominican Republic and Honduras are producing excellent cigars as well. And I see a bright future unless politics crosses out our future plans. I think we're getting close to paradise. I see more problems arising from FDA, from taxation, from rules, national or international rules regulating cigars. But the cigar industry itself is at a peak. That's my statement.
Yeah, and I certainly can't disagree with what my two colleagues have said. You know, I maybe tend to take a little more guarded, threat-sensitive approach, which is, you know, things are going generally very well right now. The industry is doing well. As Erik alluded to, there's a lot of people who are either getting into cigars for the first time or existing cigar smokers who are able to enjoy them more often because of the realities of working from home or working on different schedules or whatever the case may be. And certainly we're all cognizant in the US of FDA regulations, taxation, smoking bans, things like that. But, you know, what I tend to remind myself and those around me when it comes to discussions like this is, you know, you have to appreciate that things are good and guard them, because it's easy to think about, or to, I guess, maybe to overlook them. But as we've seen, you know, things can get disrupted fairly quickly. And so when I look to the future, I take everything that Erik and Reinhold said and add on to it that, you know, make sure as an industry that we're not overlooking the people making the cigars. Make sure that they're healthy and they're fed and they're safe and they're secure, and do whatever needs to be done to ensure that. Make sure the people in the factories are in that same boat. Make sure that our retailers are able to continue to sell cigars and offer them. And sometimes what it means, at least in the US and as I've seen it, is that you always have to be playing defense. You know, this is an industry and a segment that is not many days go by without somebody trying to make an attempt to limit our enjoyment of premium cigars. And you have to accept that as a reality. And it's unfortunate, but it is the reality of the time that we're living in. So appreciate the good times and work hard to maintain them, because as we've seen, it can go sideways fairly quickly and can be fairly disruptive. And at least, and again, credit to the cigar community. I remember having this conversation with somebody about a year ago, right as this all was settling in, and thinking, oh boy, this isn't great. And somehow the industry and consumers came back enjoying more cigars and making great cigars than I was able to foresee happening. And I am so glad I was wrong about that. But again, you know, enjoy it and work hard to protect it, because it can be taken away. It can be compromised real quickly by somebody or a group of people that doesn't want to see us doing what we're doing right now. So, but other than that, I'm incredibly optimistic. I'm fortunate to be part of it, and looking forward to a long and enjoyable ride in this business.
Gentlemen, I want to thank all of you for such a wonderful show and an enlightening conversation today. But I also would like to thank all of you for your amazing contribution to the cigar industry through your respective channels and the media outlets that you're all representing, whether that's Halfwhell with Patrick, you and your amazing team, Erik and his incredible team over at the Cigar Snob magazine, and Reinhold with the Cigar Journal family and dream team. So thank you all for your continuous, amazing, brilliant work and everything that you do for the cigar industry. And of course, thank you, Reinhard, for being a wonderful host together
Pleasure.
with me for this show. The 9th episode of Puro Sabor Virtual 2021, about Nicaragua now being the #1 spot. Thank you, one and all, for joining us here tonight. And I wish you all a fantastic rest of the week. We'll see each other again in 2 weeks' time at August 5th for the final episode of this festival. But until then, you all be safe, be healthy and well. And again, my sincere thanks to Reinhard over at the Leaf Master in Dubai, Erik Calvino from Cigar Snob magazine, Reinhold with Cigar Journal, and Patrick Lagreid with Halfwhell. Thank you so much, and let him up until next time. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Amazing.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, guys. Thank you again.